This week, keep the guard up. Hit me. Come on, hit me. Come on. Come on, Jack. Hit me. Hit me. Hit me. Come on. Come on. Here it is. Here it is. Hit it. Come on, son. Come on. Son, left. What are you doing?
The Tree of Life is written and directed by Terrence Malick, and it most notably stars Brad Pitt, Jessica Chastain, and Sean Penn. So The Tree of Life is a film that has had mountains of enthusiasm from you guys. You guys came out in droves to vote for this film, and on top of that, it's been a highly requested film just throughout the years of me having a channel. And this is a film that I've been anticipating for an incredibly long time, because I first heard about this film back in 2011 when it was first released. But I just never got around to watching it. And, you know, on top of that, I've never seen a Terrence Malick film. And I've heard, honestly, nothing but great things about Terrence Malick. And it was just really exciting for me to finally dive in to this, you know, pretty popular film director that a lot of film lovers seem to really, really love. But also on top of that, this film was decided on a coin toss for me to watch and review first. It was in a tie with Raw, a totally different type of film. And, you know, I think it's really ironic that this film won the coin toss, because I'm not being dramatic when I say this, guys, but I think that this is quite possibly one of the best films that I've ever seen in my entire life. This film moved me in a way that I really didn't expect. And it's just something that, like, this film is truly something that is an example of why I truly love cinema as an art form. Like, all of it encompasses exactly why I admire art pieces. Pretty much everything about this film really clicked with me and worked for me on an extremely high level. And it's just a film that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And I can't say how happy I am that I actually watched this film and experienced it. And this is a film that utilizes every single aspect of filmmaking in a way that I just think is absolutely masterful and visionary and creative, and just has so much to say about the human experience. I just found this to be such a thought-provoking, emotional, and empowering film that also achieves all of these things through unconventional means, which is something that I absolutely love in filmmaking. Because this film, let me tell you, it's unconventional as shit. Pretty much from the top down, it takes a different approach from what people would consider to be normal, average, and templative and conventional type of filmmaking. But before I get into all that, let me just say that I watched the Criterion director's cut that's about 3 hours long. I think it's 3 hours and 8 minutes or something like that. And I believe that the theatrical release is like 2 hours and 11 minutes. So it's like, I believe there's like 50 or more minutes added to the actual director's cut. And it's just like unfathomable for me to believe that people have experienced this film in a way that wasn't the director's cut. Because the director's cut, I feel like I really wouldn't want to cut anything out of that, because I feel like everything just adds so much to the film, and everything feels incredibly purposeful and necessary for what this film is trying to achieve. And I definitely recommend everybody watch the Criterion director's cut. I'm not sure how great the theatrical cut is on its own. I mean, I'm sure that it's perfectly fine. I'm sure it's a fantastic film still. But it's just hard for me to imagine experiencing a version that really isn't this one. Because even though it's an incredibly long film, 3 hours or so, for me, like, I didn't want it to end. Like, this was a film that, like, I feel like I could have watched for 4 or 5 hours. And, I would just have such a moving, existential, ego-removing type of experience that you just don't get with a lot of films. And I really wish I was able to watch this in a theater, because there is just mind-blowing segments of this film. But also, before I get into just the aesthetic beauty of this film, let me also just, if you haven't seen this film and you're gonna go into it just based off this review, just know that essentially this entire film is purely thematic. And when I say thematic, like I'm not just using the word thematic to sound like pretentious or like as if I have some sort of knowledge you guys don't. Like when I say thematic, I really just mean that essentially every part of this film is just trying to express a theme of some sort and is trying to get you to think about a certain subject. And I absolutely loved that in this film, because there are films that I've seen that, you know, are purely thematic, but there's just not enough intrigue and there's not enough engagement with what it's going for. But this film, I felt absolutely engaged throughout the entirety of its runtime. And again, it's a 3-hour film. You have a lot to kind of mess up there. And the fact that I felt engaged throughout the entire runtime is like, that's just a huge achievement in filmmaking to me. But just go into this film knowing that this is essentially an art piece. This is a film that is trying to get you to think about certain subjects. And, you know, it in ways, maybe it's trying to be extremely relatable to you in your life. But, you know, in a really unconventional way, but a still really effective way, which is, again, like, I just love that aspect of this film. But this is a film that, again, every scene that you see, every shot that you see is trying to express a certain type of thought-provoking subject, whether it's about the meaning of life in general, whether it's about the traditional family dynamic and the pros and cons of that kind of dynamic, and what that could possibly mean for children growing up, what religion can do sometimes to the human mind when you set them up with a certain expectation and they start seeing the reality of nature and its chaos unfold, you know, right before their eyes, and their mind is having a really hard time trying to adjust to the reality that they're experiencing. Love that aspect of the film, by the way. Or, you know, is trying to, you know, say something about love and how essential it is to the human condition, but, you know, beyond the human condition, is it something that is inherent in the universe itself? And this film just has so much to say about so much stuff. Like, you know, maybe if you're not used to watching unconventional films but you just love these kind of subjects about just life and love, the nature of the universe and chaos, even coming of age in this, like, if you just enjoy science, philosophy, and all that kind of stuff, I feel like you could still really enjoy this film, even though it is quite artistic and unconventional and even abstract, to be honest. Like, the ending to this film, I was absolutely blown away by, and I love it to death, because not only is it, like, just really creative and inspiring and powerful, but it's abstract, but it's also coherent at the same time. Like, one of the issues that I kind of had with Possession is that I felt like it lacked in coherence, but this film felt incredibly coherent, and when it goes for that kind of abstract angle, I feel like it lands incredibly well because of its execution. I absolutely loved that about this film, and the ending was just something that it's unlike a lot of things that I've ever seen. But anyway, let's get to this film's aesthetic beauty, because holy shit, Emmanuel Lubezki behind the camera in this one, pretty much my favorite cinematographer at this point. The guy behind The Revenant, the guy behind Gravity, the guy behind Birdman, the guy behind Children of Men. This guy is an incredible cinematographer, and I feel like Malick utilized him in the best way that he possibly could. And this film is absolutely filled with stunning imagery, existential imagery. It's certainly one of the most beautiful films that I've ever seen in my entire life, just from the aesthetic point of view. Let me just talk about the fundamental structure of this film, because it also is layered in a way and structured in a way that is unlike most movies that you've seen. So this film has, to me, it felt like it had a first act, a second act, and then an incredibly long third act. It's funny because the way that the film sets itself up, you think that, again, like, it's going to have a normal 3-act structure, but then, like, the third act just keeps going on and on and on, and you're realizing, like, damn, this is just a really unique film. The second act to this film was such an existential, philosophical, scientific journey about just, like, the evolution of the universe, the evolution of life, somewhat the evolution of man. And it was like this weird, like, but yet stunning IMAX experience that, again, one of the reasons why I really wish that I would have experienced this in a theater. Because it just feels like that type of film. I hope one day they just, play it like as a classic and I can go watch it in a theater. But the second act of this is something that I really didn't expect going into it. I love it so much because what it does is that it sets up a kind of sense of perspective. So when it gets to the next act where you actually focus on the more narrative and character aspect of the film, it's like a huge ego remover. Like when you're watching it, it's just like you are perceiving the third act in a way that is much more appropriate, like a more fly on the wall approach. And that's another thing about the direction of this film, is that all the camera work and most of the aesthetic work is filmed in a way that makes you feel like you are kind of like a fly on a wall. I feel like all of the aesthetics just came together to give you something that was engaging, but also incredibly thought-provoking and thematic. And it was just all purposefully done, and it just worked so well for me. Like, everything about this film worked incredibly well. And the acting is something I haven't really touched on, but I think the acting is absolutely brilliant. Jessica Chastain, Brad Pitt, obviously two brilliant actors. There are certain scenes where they definitely had to convey certain amounts of emotion, and they did an absolutely wonderful job, and they really knocked it out of the park. And the writing in this film, I think, is 95% perfect. The writing is maybe the only aspect of this film that I think is slightly flawed, just very slightly. And, I hate to say it because I feel like maybe I'm just nitpicking a little bit, but, like, before I get to those nitpicks, most of the writing, again, like 95% of it, I think was incredible, because, like, what it does is that a lot of it is, like, voiceover narration of what characters are thinking, and, like, I feel like a lot of those bits of narration were so carefully chosen, and you could tell they're really carefully chosen because it doesn't want to push anything on you, but it definitely wants to get you to think about something. And that's what I felt like this entire film was like. I didn't feel like I was being preached to, but it definitely was trying to get me to think about certain subjects. And I think I have to applaud a lot of the writing in this, because I just feel like it was, again, it's incredibly purposefully chosen, and you can tell that it was really carefully considered throughout the writing process. And I guess to get to the nitpicks is, the only few times where I feel like the writing was just a bit flawed was when there was just, in the beginning, honestly, like when the first bits of voiceover narration occur, I thought that those bits were maybe just a little bit too on the nose and maybe a little bit too explanatory. And there's also a part in the third act where you have this neighbor church-going character who has a moment where she's kind of explaining Brad Pitt's character a little bit too much. And I felt like the film did a brilliant job already, conveying, not just Brad Pitt, obviously the direction in his acting were just like, it was already conveying a lot of insightful things about his character. And, the church-going lady was kind of giving the audience too much and kind of hitting them over the head with something that we already were visually conveyed to. And, other than that, that's really it. Those are the only real honest nitpicks I have with the movie, because I think the direction is perfect, the aesthetic is perfect, the thematic conveyances are perfect, and I just feel like this film offers so much. Like, this is a powerhouse in just art in general. I don't even want to say film or cinema, because for me, this just feels like art. Like, this would just be considered an art piece. This really encompasses everything that I love about art. And this is just a film that I really can't recommend enough, especially to those who just love art and just love philosophy, love the truth of our universe, the nature of our universe. It was just such a powerful, thought-provoking, emotional experience to me. And I really urge everybody who hasn't seen this movie to go and watch this film, because I truly loved it. I cannot wait to get more into Terrence Malick's work. And I think that the Thin Red Line is probably the next film I'm going to check out, because I've just heard nothing but fantastic things about that film. So I'm going to give The Tree of Life a 9.5 out of 10. I really wanted to give this film just a perfect 10 out of 10 score, but I like my heart was telling me to give it a perfect score, but my brain was just like, no, that's a little bit dishonest. You did have slight issues with the writing here and there, so I'm trying to be as honest and objective as I possibly can here. So those are my thoughts on the Tree of Life. I have the Raw review coming up, so stay tuned for that review. And let me know your thoughts on the Tree of Life. I don't know how many of y'all out there have actually seen it already, but do you love it? Do you hate it? I hope you don't hate it, but if you have your criticisms, go ahead and lay them out there. I'm not scared. I would love to have a discussion. That's another thing I love about art. So, and also please, if you have any other films that you want to recommend to me, let it be known in the comment section as well, because I'm probably going to put together another poll tonight or tomorrow night, and so we can vote on the next film. But if you really enjoyed what I had to say about the Tree of Life, please give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.